Hello and welcome everyone. I am Vishwas Sinha, sub-editor at Elets Technomedia, India's leading and largest B2B multimedia platform. On behalf of Elets Technomedia and the Banking and Finance Post magazine, I extend a warm welcome to you all for this newest series, the Elets Fintech Dialogues. This new series is happening in collaboration with the Department of Electronics, IT, Biotechnology, and Science and Technology and Government of Karnataka. This exclusive series is an integral part of our World Fintech Summit, a two-day premier event by Elets Technomedia that brings together the global fintech and BFSI community together. From policymakers and industry leaders to innovators and key stakeholders, the summit fosters the meaningful collaboration aimed at driving innovation and growth in the financial services worldwide. So we are honored to have the Department of Electronics, IT, Biotechnology, Science and Technology, and Government of Karnataka as the host state partner. Alongside them, we have Karnataka Digital Economy Mission, KDEM, as our strategic partner for the World Fintech Summit. The Elets Fintech Dialogue series celebrates trailblazing leaders and innovators whose fintech driven initiatives are transforming the lives in the industry. And today, we are very privileged to host an inspiring entrepreneur who has been instrumental in revolutionizing the BFSI industry in India. So it is an absolute pleasure to welcome you, Mr. Ramakrishnan Ramamurthy, sir, Chief Delivery and Operation Officer in India at Worldline. So we thank you so much for being here, sir.
Thank you, Vishwas, for the lovely introduction. Pleasure to be talking to you today.
Thanks a lot, sir. So for our audience, in order to brief about Mr. Ramakrishnan Ramamurthy, sir, so he is a Chief Delivery and Operation Officer India at Worldline, and he's a veteran with 25 plus years of expertise in IT services, operational governance, and scalable payment solutions. At Worldline, he drives an end-to-end delivery fund settlements and process innovation, ensuring a seamless digital transactions. He's a commerce graduate from Gujarat University and ICWI certified costing professional. Mr. Ramakrishnan specializes in fintech infrastructure, risk management, and cross-sector collaboration, positioning him as a key enabler of India's digital payment evolution. So thank you once again for joining us for this special episode of the Elets Fintech Dialogue. It's truly an honor to have you today with us, sir. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Vishwas.
Yeah, so now I think we can just begin our conversation with.
Absolutely. Let's get into
it. Sure. So here's a set of questions, sir. Actually, we're going to ask you for this basic fintech dialogues. So first, I would like to know, sir, the real-time data is increasingly, critically in the fintech landscape, and so like we can see today, like data is, constantly charging from all the sources and all the ends in the world. So what are the key challenges companies face in, harnessing this data effectively? So thank you once again for joining us for this special episode of the Elets Fintech Dialogue. It's truly an honor to have you today with us, sir. Thank you so much again.
That's a good question to begin with. And
yeah, so now I think we can just begin our conversation with.
A lot of it is data flowing digitally.
Sure. If you have to so here's a set of questions that actually I'm going to ask you for this basic fintech dialogue. So first, I would like to know, sir, the real-time data is increasingly, critically in the fintech landscape, and so like we can see today, like data is, constantly charging from all the sources and all the ends in the world. So what are the key challenges companies face in, harnessing this data effectively for decision making and fraud detection and delivering a seamless, customer experience?
Whether it's the India stack or whether it's how the digital payments ecosystem is evolving. So you have on two pivots, very sensitive data flowing digitally in a market which may not be at the highest levels of awareness, and that is the context of what the risk lies underneath. And so how do you deal with this? So every customer who shares his data may not necessarily know how best to secure it. So the onus is effectively on the ecosystem which is facilitating this process, which largely is, say, the fintechs, and hence they have to be responsible and accountable in terms of how they manage. And if you look at what India has brought out, and rightly so, and I think that's the best way to direct this and manage this securely, is the DPDP Act, right? It clearly defines who plays what role, what is important data, and how it needs to be secured, and who needs to manage and how. So I think the framework of the challenge, which was currently maybe dealt with in pockets, has now been consolidated in terms of how it needs to be managed in the DPDP world. While there is going to be an onerous responsibility on the entire ecosystem to adapt it, it is going to mean investments in cost, investments in enhancing the layers of security from a data management perspective. But I think we have a good way forward to manage and mitigate the risks that are there. And that once that is implemented, I think the underlying data source remains and is available to be enriched, but in a more secure, reliable, and a safe way.
Yes, sir. Like that's the perfect sort of definition you have properly presented, like DPDP Act and the India stack also. These things are playing a major role in streamlining the data for India specifically, I must say. So thank you so much, sir.
Correct.
So now I would like to know, sir, like for Worldline, Worldline has had a strong presence in India for over 26 years, and so how do you envision this, continuous role in shaping and supporting the evolution of India's fintech ecosystem, basically, because particularly in areas like digital payments, financial inclusion, and innovation, these things are pretty complex. So how do you manage it, and what type of the process that Worldline has for the 26 years? So I would like to know that.
I think, yeah, we are actually, I would think, with the legacy of experience that we carry in this ecosystem, we have seen the first uh, sprouts of digital payments, and we've been part of the journey from there till now. So that gives us a very wide width of experience in the domain, and also having dealt with a lot of challenges in terms of what it takes to bridge the digital payment ecosystem in the country, right? So from that perspective, we have seen the wave of growth, we have seen the wave of challenges, we have seen what it takes to bridge, and that's the experience that kind of helps us define how we can enable and contribute further. And that's a very good backbone to carry at this point in time when digital payments in India is at the point of explosion, right? So what we have done, and we have done brilliantly as compared to the rest of the world, is and if you have to take a quick correlation to another ecosystem, like if you look at the telcos who transition from a 2G to 3G to 5G and now maybe fiber, right? The digital payment ecosystem in India has actually jumped from 2G to fiber today, practically, if you have to see the leap of faith that we have done, and particularly how, say, UPI has revolutionized digital payments in India by taking it to the last mile. Having said that, there are two specific areas in which this needs to be dealt with in India, and that also defines the digital payment ecosystem in India. There is a mature ecosystem, which is a tier 1, 2, 3, 1 from a customer demographic perspective, and second from the perspective how digital commerce is also enabled in these ecosystems. Here, you have a set of consumers who are fairly financially literate, who are aware about what is digital payments, who have used it at multiple realizations, say, including, say, their daily essentials today, right? So their willingness and their awareness to transact digitally for anything and everything is fairly well realized. For that ecosystem, what is required is very different from what would be required, say, from an inclusion ecosystem. So that ecosystem, while we say India is digital, but knowing digital commerce, and you take that as an example, and that's the best example to kind of relate to the reality of India. While we say it is digital commerce, but 30% of digital commerce is still cash on delivery, or maybe more than 30% of is cash on delivery, right? So you've still not done away with the problem of cash there itself. So what can you build as convergence as the way forward to bridge what is managed digitally to what can be converted in the physical form also to digital? So combining the online and the offline together from a seamless customer experience and eliminate the friction is going to convert the additional delta of what is cash into digital. So that's what needs to be dealt with in the realized ecosystem from a convergence point of view, and that's where, say, you'll be hearing a lot of talk about omni-channel being enabled in industry specific use cases. So that's the positioning from that market. But if you have to look at the rural market, right, which is where, while the financial literacy has happened from a Jandan and other perspective, so we have practically the entire ecosystem which has come from a banking inclusion perspective, but the digital inclusion is at very early stages. While UPI has gone down to the last mile, but for them to transact using UPI for their commerce, you will need the payment infrastructure also to get enabled there, right? And that's where the cost of enabling payment infrastructure is going to become a big question. There, the opportunity is to say, what do you have that can be leveraged and can become a substitute for what you see in the top tier, right? Top tier, since the commerce value is large, you have an ability to kind of build very strong rails on payment infrastructure. There, the opportunity is more to say, do you have a smartphone? Can that smartphone become your payment infrastructure device? Can you enable a QR code on it? Can you enable a software on it? And can that become the transactable base for you to run? And that kind of would help realize that part of the ecosystem to transport digitally. That's what we are pursuing innovation. So we are pursuing innovation in two specific directions. One is the realized world, and second is what needs to be enabled differently for the world, which is at a very early stage of digital awareness. So that's the perspective that we take, and that's the value that we can create, continue to get. So it's very early stage of digital payments in India. If you look at it from a total money movement perspective, there is a long way to cover. So the journey of evolution for us continues, and that's what keeps us onto the ground and keep evolving.
Exactly. Perfectly explained, sir. Because I guess this right now, I mean, we are seeing the UPI evolution since, I mean to say, like from 2016, UPI has been evolved at a mass scale, and recently we've been searching about the data, and in last 2025, in the closing of the March month, I guess it has 16.3 billion of the transactions had happened, costing around 24 lakh crore just from the UPI sources, because everything has, everybody has, if it is a small device or a large device, everybody has the UPI system. So that is the really big. I mean to say, like in these 10 years, if UPI has evolved this much, so in next 10, I must say, like we can see a lot more development into it, and the organizations like Worldline can help more into streamline these kind of transaction payments as well. So that was a perfect explanation, sir. So now I would like to know, sir, like you have also mentioned about the delivery system, like some things are not getting aligned with it because people are ordering online but they are paying in cash. So yeah, these are still the challenges, and based upon those, I would like to know, like, what are the opportunities and different sort of challenges do the financial institution face, basically, not to be specific about the e-commerce platform, but the financial institution. When because there is a cross-border payment solution basically, and that is kind of hassle for many financial institutions. So what are the strategies that they can employ in order to streamline these transactions and reduce the cost? So would you like to put the light on it, please?
Absolutely, and that's an important perspective to build from the evolution of digital payments also in India. With India now being such a focused economy and growing at the pace where exports are growing, and so much more focus coming on to say MSME as a segment which needs to build the backbone of exports. Building a very efficient cross-border solution becomes an absolute imperative. I'll first lay out in terms of what is the current state and where does it need to get to, and what's the bridge that is required. See, in the current state, cross-border, when you talk about cross-border, one is there are regulatory barriers. There are barriers to say, how does, say, an exporter who is exporting a commodity from, say, India to, say even the Gulf corridor, the payment is not going to happen in Indian rupees. It's going to happen with the local currency of choice there, right? So how do you bring these two partners into one place? Ordering is possible, but payment is still continuing the traditional banking route, which makes, one is it's a disconnected ecosystem. Second, of course, the friction and the time to realize the payment is extraordinarily high. And that kind of adds to the cost of payment as well, because the whole thing about digital payments is not just about the experience, but also about enabling faster realization of money so that the money can be put to optimum use. And that's where the entire proposition for cross-border comes in. It comes in fundamentally on two pillars. The good thing about India and the good thing about, say, all the fintech players who are, or the paytechs within the fintech ecosystem is they have built a very robust aggregation platform which can manage multiple modes. While the UPI is driving a large part of the digital payments in India, but cards is a very relevant use case for high spends. There is still wallets that are there. There are still alternate payment options like a net banking which still continues to exist. A combination of all of this is what will be available in bits and pieces in the various geographies that you go into. Which still, say, like if you go into the realized economies like a US or a Europe, it is still predominantly cards with some alternate payment options. So from a realization perspective on the platform on how to manage multiple options, that is already available as a base capability in India. What is then required? The requirement is fundamentally to enable partnerships into those many geographies where there are also payfacs. So payfacs is a norm in all the geographies, right? So how do you build efficient partnerships across various geographies to bring and connect the two platforms in one place? And that could enable digital commerce across while using the banking rails just to realize the money in a faster pace. And that's the convergent solution that we're talking about when we're talking about cross-border payments. RBI, the great thing about India is RBI, as usual, is always a step forward on all of that. They already created the guidelines for cross-border payments to be enabled via the payment aggregator ecosystem, and that is already helping build bridges with multiple geographies. So I think we are at a good place to eliminate the friction, to make money realization a lot more faster, and enable connected commerce for a lot of the smaller players who otherwise may not have the ability to reach multiple markets.
Exactly. Yes. So the very good point you mentioned about MSME, sir, basically. Yeah, because those organizations, in order to grow more and adapt for the global audience, they need these streamlined processes of the cross-border payment solutions. So yeah, that's the perfect sort of explanation you have provided. Thank you so much. So now I would like to know, sir, how is Worldline basically, using the embedded in ESG principles in order to, cater the overall businesses and product strategy. So, can you just share some what are some emerging sustainable fintech innovations you have done, and like green payments or ethical data usage? So, what kind of the things that excites you the most, and just going to erupt in next financial inclusion?
I think that's a great question. Not many people think about ESG as one of the fundamental baseline principles when you talk about evolution of any business, and payments is a very important contributor to ESG. So to think about and Worldline being a global organization is committed to the principles of ESG. Fundamentally, we are committed to as one of the core KPIs for the organization as a whole. We are committed to carbon neutrality, and and we keep measuring our carbon footprints across the global organization every year, and that's published as an audited statistic every year to say, are we aligned to what we have committed to a target on? And I can very confidently say we are at a fairly well advanced stage of not just meeting what you have committed, but being ahead of the curve in terms of meeting the carbon neutrality norms. To give the perspective of what are we doing in India, and that's where I think the perspective of how will you engage, say, rural market. I'm just taking this as an example because it will be relatable. How do you engage the rural market? Do you want to create and replicate the infrastructure, say what you have in a tier 1 metro, right? You can keep adding POS devices, you can keep adding gateways, you can keep printing charge slips, and because of the amount of commerce, there is an ability to pay as well. But when you have to take this down to, say, a rural village, how will you enable sustainability? That the key question is, the cost of payment cannot be the same as what it is in a tier 1 or 2 or 3. What you have to build is to say, how much of this can be duplicated or replicated with what you have and still enable digital payments. And that, I think, what the smartphone revolution in India is driving is going to take payments to a very sustainable growth phase, just be enabling payments within your own device. If you look at some of the things that are happening, all your new smartphones are all NFC enabled already, right? So if I'm able to enable, say, the merchant smartphone with a soft POS as an example, right? It's an app which is sitting within your banking app, or it's an app standalone sitting on your mobile, through which you could tap and pay, which means you could use a card, you could use your QR to pay, you could use your net banking to pay, right? Or you could even use a wallet to pay. But with both sides, the consumer and the merchant using a device of what he has. So you don't need to create a payment infrastructure at all. That's a huge elimination in the process. The second bit, today, as legacy and tradition, we are very comfortable saying that, okay, you did a transaction, can you give me a receipt for it, right? With a smartphone on both sides, I just need to give you a digital message. It's like receiving an SMS or receiving a digital print of your receipt. That eliminates the paper completely. That is a very significant component of not just the elimination of the paper, but of the cost of the transaction as well. So that is another pillar which gets added to the leg of sustainability. The third, which is very specific use cases that need to be read. Let's look at where does cash get consumed in India. One is, of course, in the large mass, it is a rural market which is untapped. But there are also the cash on delivery use cases, not limited to e-com, but say, just as an example, in insurance, right? Insurance is a very underpenetrated market in India. If you have to do rural sourcing, then it is effectively cash or a check that gets paid out. How do you solve for that problem, right? Again, the same software, if it gets embedded into the insurance app that is there with an agent, you eliminate cash completely. So that solves for the problem of cash, which is a huge sustainability problem from moving from a cash-led economy to a cashless economy, right? The IRDA mandates that a receipt needs to be issued to the customer the moment he makes you a payment. How would you do it? It's a physical receipt that's getting issued, and which is also not unreconciled entirely, right? But here again, since you're collecting a digital payment, the money is already cited, recorded, and hence your ability to issue a receipt real time again in a digital form. So these are the initiatives that need to be built. One from a large mass tapping point of view in terms of how do you eliminate the need to recreate payment infrastructure, and second, solving for the specific use cases where you see a lot of, say, a cash involved or friction processes involved, which can be eliminated through digital enablements and solutions that can power it. So that's the roadmap that we're taking as part of our core strategy to say, how do we build solutions, one for the large market and second for industry specific solutions where this ecosystem needs to be built. That's the focus that we look at. And software, as an example I gave, is one of the key initiatives that we're driving.
Yes. All right. So yeah, perfectly explained, sir. Like ESG principle are required now. If we are going digitally, then everything has to be in digital, and protecting the environment and keeping the sustainability as well is the most important thing for our country as well. So thank you so much, sir. And now I would like to know, sir, so how Worldline is basically promoting diversity. I mean to say, diversity and equity and inclusion within the fintech industry, to be specific. What kind of the impact do you believe these efforts can have on the innovation and growth of Indian fintech industry, basically? So,
sure. Let me answer that in two parts. One is fundamentally,
sure.
what's the basic philosophy and principle Worldline as an entity or as a group
Okay.
imbibes, right? For us, we call it the DI principle, which is diversity, equality, and inclusion, is a baseline metric to have as part of our workforce management. So it is part of our core workforce management, part of our culture. And when I say workforce, not limited at any stage, at every stage of the organization, right till the top management of the company, we do pursue and follow a policy saying that there must be gender equality in each one of them. And there is an underlying reason for it also. When you look at the perspectives of gender and what they carry, we come with a very different mindset and orientation. And it's only when the two perspectives come together do you have a holistic point of view. And that has to be the key for you to be able to solve for a problem or deal with any situation that you have either in your daily life or in what you will need to manage in your professional life. So that's something that we follow as a principle to I would not limit it to a product or an innovation, to a way of working. And that's the philosophy that we follow. because product innovation becomes then a very maybe a small part of the what we could do there. It's about how do you take a holistic perspective for everything that you do in execution, that you have a fairly balanced view to what you want to do either in a personal life, professional life. But in professional life, that's something that we track across the organization at all levels, and that gives us the strength and the belief that we have a better view of the ecosystem, better view of what we are doing, and a better view to solve all problems that come across us.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for answering that. And I believe like these efforts, can really put a great effort, can amplify the fintech industry in India. And with this amplifying phase, sir, I would like to know the fintech is growing rapidly. Like if I mention about 2016 from, I mean to say like 2011, the wave had started basically. So along with that wave, when the technology sector boom, when the fintech sector boom, there are some cybersecurity threats also. Not in the digital industry, but in finance, it is considered as a major threat source or major fact of just a challenge. So based upon those cybersecurity threats and the challenges, so how Worldline is basically what they are doing to address these challenges and making it more streamlined, because cybersecurity is also on the verge of rapid growth along with the growth in fintech and digital technology. So I would you
So
yes,
a very relevant question for how do you manage a reliable, safe, and a secure environment,
exactly,
right? And that's a very important baseline to have. And like you rightly said, India is like I said earlier, is at a very early stages of digital evolution. While we all want to assume the experience of managing our world digitally, because it gives us convenience for sure, but at the same time, how sensitive are we to the data that is being broadcast in this process, right? And there are two parts to data sensitive. One is what is the personal data. So if you're in commerce, you have to do KYC, right? And KYC is going to mean personal sensitive data about you getting transmitted. The second bit is if you're going to do any commerce or any finance, there is going to be payments data that is going to be transmitted. Again, that is sensitive data. In a world like India, where maybe the awareness is not at the highest level, the probability of cybersecurity incidents for data compromises are going to be higher, and that is a realistic threat that we have to first accept. Only then you can adopt to do something about it. So, from our perspective, we realize this to be one of the key pillars of how we need to build a construct on governance. So what as an organization we have done is cybersecurity and the resilience, more than cybersecurity, the resilience to cybersecurity threats is what we need to embed as part of whatever we are doing in terms of the products that we're building, in terms of the infrastructure that is getting created to support this. What is the layer of security layers that we're putting in? So we've invested significantly in ensuring that we are at the latest and the best solutions that need to be embedded into our overall design for our products and solutions. And the monitoring of all real-time data threats is also practically with the latest tools and technology. What we have done to ensure that this roadmap is managed critically and sustainably over a period in time is to create a focused organization which deals with only cybersecurity. And that organization also from a governance perspective is at two levels. There is a ground team which needs to have its feet on the ground and eye on the ground to see what's happening and see that every threat is mitigated. But also a controlling framework above that to say that the overall posture is what it needs to be from whatever is the evolving ecosystem outside. So one is, of course, you have a ground up view of what is getting done, but there is also an ecosystem bridge of what's happening in the external ecosystem versus what you have internally, and are they at a state that we are comfortable, we are certain, and we are being responsible about how the data is getting managed. So that's the program that we adopted in terms of how we want to deal with this real time situation of managing cybersecurity. But it's going to be an evolving process. If we are not done yet. Uh, what we are seeing in the Indian ecosystem is, while it's become more organized as well. Like what used to be maybe a set of individuals is now more an organized program, and hence, while you are evolving, that side of the ecosystem is also evolving rapidly. For us, the best way to bridge is not be limited to what we're doing internally. It is very important to have a very conscious view of what's happening externally as well. So it's from that perspective, I think we have the best balance of both sides for us to have to maintain the highest standards on infrastructure and security to manage cyber threats.
Okay. Yes, that's really good, sir. Because with this evolving phase, I guess cybersecurity is keep going to increase, and it's a very significant approach you have said. Like first, we have to look at ourselves, like what are the problems, basically where we stand currently. Only then we can pursue for the advancements level, like what we can make. I just really mean to say, like in cases, I must say, like in 2015 or 2016, we have seen some sort of these fintech malfunctioning or miscalculations were there just because of this, the cybersecurity issues. But right now we see a more streamlined process, and in upcoming years, I must say, like it would be more streamlined, and because the things are going to be pretty streamlined because of these cybersecurity forums. So yeah, that's
And I'm sure
perfect.
maybe an added point there also is how our regulatory ecosystem is also evolving
Yes,
to be
yes,
more
yes.
conscious about this. So the standards and the frameworks that we're laying out to manage this is also fairly well realized and well enriched. So I think
Sure, sure.
while the
Yes.
organization needs to do its part, but I think we have a fairly strong regulatory approach, not just from an RBI perspective, but even say from organizations like a certain who are providing very good frameworks to manage.
Yes, 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 perfectly. So thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for answering that. And so now, as everything today, if we talk about the digital world today, then if we talk to a layman about the digital world and the fintech things, so one thing that promisingly pop out, and that is AI. So I would like to know, like, what are the most promising applications of AI fintechs, and how can financial institution, particularly leverage these technology like AI to be specific, in order to improve the customer services, reduce the cost, and just cut down the risk, basically. So how AI is progressing into it, sir?
So a very often used term today in today's world is AI in
Yes,
everything.
sir.
While it is a
Definitely.
very important approach to bring in more efficiency and more than efficiency, it's to bring standardization in how you respond to your customers. So to that extent, there is a very significant value that AI brings to the table. So if I have to articulate this from say from a payments perspective, there are two or three very key verticals where AI is going to bring in a lot of value. First and foremost, let me articulate about what's the value creation it's going to bring in from a risk perspective, right? So traditionally, risk analytical engines have been managing, uh, say, risk scoring more from the feed that it is getting and say tools and templates that have been embedded, and with a lot of manual intervention in terms of say how as a very simple daily problem that you have to deal with. Say, how do we deal with false positives? What AI is going to bring in here as an advantage is to bring the learning of all of this to start tweaking the rules ahead of time to say, now my rule set itself is enriched to be able to manage a lot of false positives so that the final risk score that comes out for a transaction is probably at a far higher level of accuracy than what it was before, right? The second bit, which is also going to get into this, is going to be consumer behavior, right? Consumer behavior and payment behavior, which is what AI is going to bring in at a far faster pace than what it has been realized before, and that's going to make again risk monitoring as a program a far more enriched and an efficient program than what it has been. So that's one pivot on say risk as a framework. If you have to look at payments itself as a framework, there is a huge amount of payments data sitting with all of the companies who are in the payments domain. How much can you use that payment data to make it to be to induce predictive behavior models, right? So one of the key things that India as a country needs to tackle is what's the consumer behavior moving towards, and what should be innovations that is in line to the changing consumer behavior, right? It cannot be that you've innovated something and then later you're discovering maybe yes, there is an element of consumer behavior also that I need to add. Can the cycle of innovation be shortened by bringing this together? That's a humongous opportunity. And I will again correlate back to the earlier example of digital payments in a rural world. It is important to build connected commerce. You can't talk about an individual separate from a merchant, separate from, say, a financial institution like a bank. If I have to go to the remotest part of the country, you will still have a public sector bank there. The entire ecosystem is going to be in that place, right? So information is available in pockets. One is with the bank, one is with the customer, one is with the merchant. You just bringing that ecosystem together, even with a simple QR and a soft POS, will give you the entire consumer behavior of that customer in terms of what he's transacting, what is he buying, where do I need to go put up my who's my next merchant for the soft POS, what's the amount of money that is moving, how much of cash have we converted to digital, right? That could kind of speeden up the pace of digital adoption to a very different level, right? So those are kind of the revolutions that AI could bring into this ecosystem. One is, of course, to bring stability to what is already existing from a risk point of view. Second is, what is the outreach that you can do from an innovation perspective, and how faster can you get there?
Yes, totally. Perfect thing that you have said, sir. Like, not we need not too many things. Just a one simple thing can, erode too many challenges like customer services. Like it can reduce cost as well because AI is basically practically doing that right now. And the risk part we have told about, that's perfectly, that AI can produce into the fintech industry. So that's the perfect sort of explanation for that, sir. And so now I would like to know, sir, everybody today and every organization we see, not specific in the fintech industry, but BFSI as a whole, and so changes are going continuously and innovations are there. So balancing these innovations with the compliance is I must say, like, is a constant challenge for every organization. So how does Worldline stay agile in these developing solutions and navigating this complex and evolving regulatory landscapes which we have earlier also mentioned about? So now I would like to know how they can how the organizations like Worldline are helping into streamlining this innovation and compliance and regulations.
That's a very important question to ask and understand in the perspective of what we have, the conversation that we're having.
Yes.
Compliance is evolving, regulations are also evolving, and it will continue to evolve in a market like India. So while there is a pace of adoption from a digitalization perspective in the entire, say, BFSI landscape, not limited to payment, whether it's financial services, whether it's insurance, whether it's investments, or it is payments. All of this have very strong compliance frameworks of what need to get managed and something that is evolving continuously. But having said that, if you are going to be digital first, then agility has to come with a framework of compliance. So the good thing that I see in the Indian ecosystem, and I'll address it from that perspective, because that I think will bring this together in terms of how can this be managed holistically. The evolution of fintechs in India has had a very good balance in terms of the various parts of the business that needs to get managed. There are a whole lot of fintechs who are innovating in what needs to be managed from a customer front point of view. Think, what can I do to say to do scoring differently for lending? What can I do to say get to a last mile penetration from an insurance perspective? How do I go to a customer who today is maybe holding cash with him and convert him to, say, an opportunity for doing SIPs in a mutual fund? But having said that, how will you manage their KYC onboarding, risk management? There are an equal number of fintechs who are on the regtech space as well, which is what brings the balance to the evolution of the fintechs and the digital play. So an equal number of regtechs. What are the play that the regtechs are bringing into? India already has a completely digitally enabled India stack for say the onboarding to be completed. With the onboarding, how do you manage the risk management profiles, and how do you manage a final validation of the compliances to be done? The RegTech is bringing that agility to bring stitch the entire, say, just as an example, an onboarding journey together. How do I collect the customer's information online? How do I validate it with inline rails that is available from the India stack? It's a PAN validation, it's a Aadhaar validation, it's even a GST validation that needs to be done. Then how do I bring it back together to saying that all his KYC credentials done? Can I do a 𝐒𝐭𝐫𝐴 inline? Can I do a video KYC inline? And then bridge the entire onboarding program together. So that's the bit that is coming together. We are embedding this part of RegTech in terms of getting all of the species together, using the multiple rails of validations that are available in the customer lifecycle. First part from an onboarding perspective, second part from a risk validation perspective. And I think that's how we are ensuring that we are not crossing the boundaries of innovation from a compliance perspective and staying within boundaries all the time.
Sure, sir. Yes, that is the perfect explanation, sir. You have to stay in the boundaries, and that's why regulations are here. And yeah, like perfectly you have said that RegTech is basically streamlining these regulations and compliances for the organizations and fintech industries as well. And lastly, I would like to know, sir, from your perspective, like at Worldline, so what are the top three fintech trends that the BFSI leader should prioritize over next, 12 to 18 months or in a year or year and 2 years, basically, to stay ahead the curve of the digital payments and financial service. So, what are these fintech trends, if you can put the light on?
Sure. I'll kind of summarize from the conversation that we had. So the three things that become absolutely important for us. Like I said, from a worldwide perspective, and since we are deep into digital payments, for us the opportunity is on two fronts. One is like I said about for the ecosystem, which is the largely realized ecosystem. How do we bridge the physical and the digital together, and that comes from industry specific solutions with an omni-channel enablement. So that's a key focus area for us. For the deeper pockets of how do we enable digitalization at a faster pace than what it is solutions like a softwares which are easily replicable, which does not require replication of the payment infrastructure to be done, and kind of gives the flexibility and the ease from an optimization perspective of the cost of payments. So that's another key focus area for us. And having said this, I reiterate, managing compliances and to stay compliant, and we are a regulated entity. Payments is getting regulated in every aspect from an RBI perspective as well. So to ensure that we're not crossing the boundaries and laying very strong foundations, processes, policies, programs around compliance are the three imperatives for us to keep growing, to stay relevant, and to be compliant.
Yes, that is perfectly answered, sir. Thank you. And now, before we, part ways, I would like to know, sir, if you have any sort of, exclusive piece of information for our viewers, for our fintech dialogue viewers, which you haven't shared at any kind of the platform before. So we would love to, have that from you, and how the challenges and these things basically evolving into the fintech industry, to be specific. So if you have any sort of the exclusive part of information that you would like to share with us today, we would love to know
So
that.
I would say this. So fintech, when we talk about fintech, it should not be compartmentalized. Today, I see a lot of innovations within the fintech ecosystem to be compartmentalized to what we know. I think there is an imperative need, and whether you talk about credit, whether you talk about insurance, whether you talk about investments, or for that matter, when you talk about digital payments, the
Yes.
penetrations continue to be low and not growing at the pace that it needs to grow. Is fundamentally
Yes.
because of this compartmentalization, limiting our boundaries of what we are doing. I think there is a need to think beyond what we know. Only then can this realization be much faster than what it is. So
Yes.
that's the need for innovations to be specific. So the generalizations are not going to work. It is time that we start thinking about specificities of use cases that need to be solved for ecosystems that need to be bridged together for this to take off in a big way. And I think that to me is the biggest opportunities for fintechs to capture going forward.
Sure, sure. That's perfectly answered, sir. Thank you so much for this piece of information. And from that, now we would, like to thank you so much for being here with us for this, crucial piece of time. And thanks a lot for having this great conversation with us today, sir. So it was very, generous and deep dive topics we have had today at our conversation, and we would love to, present it to our audience, and we would, definitely to say our audience that if you have some kind of the questions or doubts about these things which are going in the current fintech industry, we would definitely, love to have your part of the comments and your, thoughts as well on this conversation. So thanks again, Ramakrishnan sir. Thanks again for being here. And I would like to thank my, people here with us from my panel as well. And with that, we can conclude our session today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vishwas,
Okay.
so much. It was a
Now,
lovely and engaging conversation that we had, and yeah, happy to bridge with you folks anytime for any topics of mutual interest.
definitely, sir. Definitely, that would keep on going, sir. I guess because fintech is evolving at a pace that has never have been seen at, at the world level.